You're very welcome back to Ireland AM. Now, he's played mythical fauns and hungry demons, Star Trek officers and fishmen just looking for love. But you might know him best as Billy Butcherson from Hocus Pocus.
Our next guest made his name playing scary monsters, but in real life we're told he's actually quite lovely. We're joined now by the one and only Doug Jones. Morning, Doug.
Good morning, Doug.
Hello. Good morning, all. Hi.
Doug, before the break we were talking about a new McDonald's adult Happy Meal promotion. And I thought, well, this relates in one way to you because to some extent you owe a huge and successful career to McDonald's.
I actually did. Thank you for knowing that. I was listening into your last segment. I was like, oh, I want to talk about this. I did not know that Grimace was a taste bud until just now. Thank you for that. Yeah, it is. And it makes sense. I was the Moon character, Mac Tonight. That was their nighttime character for adults. He was the hip, cool, like, hey, love you, babe, kind of guy that sold Happy Meals.
But how did you get involved in that side of acting in the first place? Because I think when you think of the kind of standard route that you go to, you go train, classical trained, whatever, you go to movies, you go to theatre, but you've always acted with your entire body, like your motions have been your language, really.
Right. Well, I believe that dialogue is both verbal and visual. And I learned all about that visual dialogue when I was a mime. I became a mime and learned how and joined a mime troupe called Mime Over Matter. That's a pun. When I was in university. And we performed live shows there. And that's really where I learned the art of visual communication, and everything from posture to gestures to facial expressions. It all says something so loud and so every bit as much as our verbal dialogue does. So that translates into monsters and crazy makeups really, really well. That's a great base art form to have underneath all that.
We have to, of course, talk about Hocus Pocus 2, which is just released now. Playing Billy Butcherson was absolutely hilarious at the time, a wonderfully lovable, if strange character, and you're reunited with the entire cast again. What's that like 29 years later?
The one word that comes to mind first is surreal. Getting to reunite with Bette Midler and Sarah Jessica Parker and Kathy and Jimmy to 29 years later. It's kind of an opportunity that none of us really saw coming back then, for sure. Rumors had started of a sequel, and then it was the fans, basically. All you out there who watched the movie either on television or your home video collection or now streaming on Disney Plus, wherever it is, you kept it alive and all of your social media, like, hey, is there going to be a sequel? That helped. So because of you, I want to say big thank you for getting us back for a sequel. It was once I got my makeup and hair and costume back on and put my voice back in, it was like, wow, it was like visiting an old friend again.
See, I wonder to some extent, have you managed to carve out the best kind of Hollywood career? Because you've been Billy Butcherson has mentioned, you've been effectively the second lead in Hellboy and Hellboy 2. You've been the lead in an Oscar-nominated film. But I assume you're a bit like the singer Sia, who wears the curtain over her face. You can still be anonymous if you choose to be.
Yeah, good for Sia. That's what I say. Yeah. Yes, I have the luxury of, when it's announced who I am and what I've done at an event or something, I get the pleasure of being a celebrity that night. That's kind of fun. But then on my personal life, I can go to a coffee shop and nobody knows who I am. That's great. But I will tell you, I'm currently in Salem, Massachusetts right now doing some promotion for Hocus Pocus 2. The movie just came available. So when I leave the hotel here, I've gotten a lot of like, excuse me, are you? Yes, I am. And because I think the crowd that's roaming the streets here this weekend, it's the first weekend of October in Salem, where the witch hunts happened. Yeah, there's a lot of like rabid Hocus Pocus fans out there on the sidewalk right now, and they know who I am.
I think Anton's not speaking for me. I'd know who you are anywhere because I know your work for many years. So no matter what, disguise or not, I'd know you a mile away because you're so iconic in what you do. Especially, I mean, viewers of the show will know that I'm a huge fan of Star Trek, and you're playing such a wonderful character in Discovery, which is the latest incarnation of it. Tell us about Saru and the time it takes putting on the makeup, because you must have the patience of a saint to do that as often as you do.
Yeah, playing Saru has been an absolute joy for me. When I got up the first call saying that I was wanted for a new alien species in a Star Trek franchise show, it was like, what? I was and I'm later in life now. So it's like, it's about time after a career under rubber. It's like, I was thinking, why would a Star Trek something not have had me by now? Well, now we do. So I'm a Kelpian. I'm the first Kelpian to join Starfleet and rise to the ranks of captain. And so that has been in developing him again from head to toe with some physicality and some interesting alien habits and things. And the makeup, yes. The makeup process is not as long as you think it is, because a lot of the work is done weeks ahead of time, making, molding, sculpting the prosthetic the prosthetic pieces, and doing a paint job on them first. The last step is getting all that on to me, and that only takes 2 hours a day with contact lenses and gloves, and that's as long as it takes the humans on the show as well. Yeah. So I'm pretty grateful that my daily process isn't so bad.
What's the longest you've ever sat in the makeup chair for a role?
Well, you mentioned the Hellboy movies before. Abe Sapien in the Hellboy movies was 12 prosthetic pieces from head to toe, blended into my shaved skin that was painted or glued. That took 3 makeup artists 7 hours a day.
So you did 7 hours of sitting in a makeup chair before you even started work?
That is correct, yeah. So that's kind of a full work day before you start your work day. But the makeup chair a lot of people, the conception is that that's the hardest part of my day. How can you sit through that? I sit easily. I'm a very boring person who can stare at a wall and go, and be happy, totally happy. But the hard part is wearing it, performing in it, keeping your character alive in it for a long 12-hour shoot day. And then you've got a 2-hour cleanup at the end of the day. You maybe have 4 hours to sleep before the next day starts. I've been through that kind of schedule a lot in my life, and that's the hard part.
It's funny, I saw you being quoted very self-deprecatingly saying that one of your biggest talents was your capacity to be uncomplaining through processes like that.
Yeah, that is a big one. If you think actors, a lot of us are known as divas, and so anytime something unnatural happens and closes us, or you'll find a lot of actors being like, "Does it have to be this hot? Get this off me! What? Ew. It's time. Can we clean that? Are we done yet?" And when you don't do that, people think you are so nice. So I don't know. I'm the one who said yes to the job, so it's my responsibility to finish it. That's how I feel about it.
Of course, we can't speak to you without talking about Guillermo Del Toro and the absolutely amazing body of work he has, and you've been included with that a lot. How did you cross paths in the first place?
Yeah, the creature effects makeup world, the artists who created the monsters that I have worn and performed in, they're the ones who have really propelled my career forward. So all the way until Guillermo was making his first American film for a big studio, Mimic. And I got a last-minute phone call from the creature shop that I'd worked with before saying, "Hey, Doug, we need a tall, skinny guy to wear a bug costume because this Canadian guy can't make it here." One of those things. And so that same night, I was in a costume for Guillermo Del Toro's first movie. We hit it off, and he kept my card in his wallet. And then 5 years later, the first Hellboy movie came up, and those creature effects designers did a maquette sculpture of me, of Abe Sapien, the Fishman character, and Guillermo was loving it. And they said, who should play this is Doug Jones, because I'd worked with them before as well. So he said, "Doug Jones, I know Doug Jones." And he pulled my card out of his wallet. And so that's the point. The Hellboy movie was where we really got to know each other well and our working relationship intact. And so from...
Sorry to cut across you, Doug. I was just going to say he's full of praise for you. I saw him saying that I think his line was that Doug Jones has an alphabet of gesture and movement from which he creates totally different poetry each time. And I just wanted to ask on that. Is it particularly challenging to create a character when you don't have, in a lot of instances, the eyes are blanked off, you don't get to use much in the way of, in some instances, any dialogue, depending on which character you're doing. Is it tricky to form a character without access to those fundamentals?
Tricky, yes. But the characterization starts like any other actor does, internally. How does this character feel about, what are his fears and wants and loves and needs and all those things? How does he interact with other characters? That starts in here. And then as physical, challenges are put onto me, how do I communicate all that through that? And so if you don't have your eyebrows to move, if you're wearing something like this that covers it, maybe a tilt of the head, or a shake of the head, or a gesture, or a posture that can sell what your eyebrows can't do. Maybe that's one example of many.
Yeah, but in The Shape of Water in particular, I mean, that must have been challenging because it wasn't your usual type of movement. I believe your director wanted you to be more like a wild animal, so you had to pare it back a bit, but have it a bit more feral.
Yes, right. Because I played two fishmen for the same director, so it got very confusing. And not many actors can say that. So Abe Sapien in the Hellboy movies was very refined and very verbal and very, had a very vocabularied, and read 3 books at a time and listened to classical music. No, this monster, a fishman from the Shape of Water, was a wild animal with some of a backstory, but. So he had to keep reminding me, not to do a performance, but to do something very real and very raw. Also having to connect with Sally Hawkins, who played Eliza in the movie, on a romantic level. So the audience had to believe that we were actually falling in love with each other. And she was a mute lady. I was an animal from the wild. And neither of us could use verbal communication to pull this off. So we had to rely on eye contact, on touch, on gesture, on a tilt of the head.
And it worked.
And I hope, thank you.
It worked beautifully because even in the silence and the pauses and the slowness of the movement, it really translated to a beautiful, beautiful love story.
Oh, thank you so much.
Can I ask one final thing, Doug? You said 2 fishmen for the one director. You've done fishmen, you've done zombies, you've done blood-sucking super vampires whose jaws separate and they consume people. You've done semi-melted guys who see through their own hands. Is there ever a point where a director approaches you with the script and you go, no, that's the line?
It's hard to shock me anymore, as you can imagine. But yeah, for me, I have done darker characters and in darker material, but I'd like to have some piece of redemption in there. If the whole story is leading to an ending where good wins over evil, if it's just a blood fest splattered on the wall with no redemption at the end, that's the story I'll say no to.
Well, Doug, it has been just a great pleasure talking to you, and we're very grateful that you would get up at horrible o'clock in the morning over in Massachusetts, so thank you. You can, of course, see Doug in Hocus Pocus 2 from today on Disney+.
Oh, that's my day made anyway.